How are you all? I hope you're all keeping well. Well, today is kind of a historic one because in the history of these Chronicles, whatever you're going to call them, tomorrow I get most of a fair bit of my freedom back. I can travel anywhere in the county, so I will be literally I'm going to start going around doing some filming and stuff like that to make some ancient sites and a few other interesting things for Beyond Room 313. So I'm terribly excited about being able to go further than 5 kilometers. Hey! If I had pots and pans to bang them, I would. You know who else you know that whole thing about banging the pots and pans in England on a Thursday night? You know who else bangs pots and pans? Yeah, prisoners in prisons during riots. Anyway, well, the remarkable of days continues with this 2020. It really should be calling at this point the 2020 Chronicles, because 2020 is panning out just like I said it would back in 2014 when the introduction of Walpurgis Night, when I said that it would be the most pivotal year since 1919, and a lot of the things that had happened in 1919 would happen again, including we're seeing pictures now all over the place of the German Communist Anti-Fascist Party using the Antifa flag, photographs right up until the 1930s. So it's really amazing. Again, being a pagan, I see everything in cycles, and everything repeats in consciousness cycles and historical cycles and natural and cosmic cycles. So yeah, today is Sunday. This is not the main talk-in chat. That'll be later. I don't have enough juice on my phone for that. This is a regular video. I'll do that in about 3 or 4 hours or something. Now, let's talk about this weekend. Now, I'm banned off Facebook for telling a funny joke until midweek. I think Wednesday or something. I'm back Wednesday or Thursday, and they gave me another 2-day ban for something else. So I've got like a consecutive sentence on Facebook. So I'll probably be back till Thursday. I was supposed to be back Tuesday, but they found something else. And the mentally ill were all fired up this weekend. Now, you hear me talking about the psychic weather thing and how that's very important to observe because it also connects to the regular weather as well. And that's why the weather was so beautiful during the lockdown. Everyone was calmed and relaxed and not really going about the hysteria of things. So they were locked indoors and not outside causing mayhem, and the weather was beautiful and sunny and relaxing and gentle and tranquil. Now, I have on my Facebook page, and I've had them for a good few years now, 5 control subjects. And you ever hear me talk about my lab rats and my specimens? Well, I've meant this is going to be all held up one day for a proper documentary or a book or something, but I'll let you into it now. Since about 2012, I have been observing, actually bang on 2012, I have been examining 5 individuals and cataloguing their behaviors and their daily lives on Facebook and social media. Now, this is a very specific control subject group that it's in Cambridge in England. Now that's the Cambridge of the universities and everything. But I've been to Cambridge a couple of times, about 6 now. Snuck in there now and again to film and explore not so much the city centre where all the famous universities and the professors are, but the surrounding kind of like poorer parts of town. I'm absolutely convinced that the city of Cambridge in England is a gigantic laboratory, and people who actually live there are actual lab rats of the universities and everything else. Not only the city itself, but also that around it. So Soham and places like that. Because remember, Cambridge has a horrible atmosphere. One of the reasons for this is some of the most diabolical people on earth are clustered there within the universities. And also it's surrounded by US and British nuclear bases. It also has a lot of affluent students in there connected to the aristocrats and wealthy Americans and wealthy students from around the world. And it's also got some very poor neighborhoods. And these poor neighborhoods are basically where they take their lab rats from. And there was a case a few years ago of like for instance the Soham twins, the murder of the 2 girls found on the perimeter of a US military base. There's no way in hell that guy Ian, what was his name? Ian something did that on his own, with just Maxine Carr. There's a major story there, and anyone who tried to investigate it was mysteriously died and things like this. Now, there's also, now the five people, without going too much deep into that, the five people I'm following, there's one of them, it was involved heavily with the Cambridge Socialist Workers' Party. Another was involved in the Cambridge Students' Truth Movement. And another one, and the other three are just random people around. They're actually poor, well, they're kind of working class. So they're all, one is on the dole, and one has a job as a cleaner, and another one, works as some kind of like truck dispatcher. He's changed jobs an awful lot. And I use these five to get to in because Cambridge is a place that's on the cusp of everything. A lot of the political, the activist groups there are completely controlled by MI5 and British intelligence and American intelligence as well. Because during the Cold War, there was a lot of anti-nuclear, anti-American marches there, so they were infiltrated by the CIA and MI5, and that tradition has been there ever since. So basically, there's a joke going about Cambridge activist groups that it's basically made up of MI5 spying upon the police spying upon the CIA, and that's what it's like. And the place is completely evil, and that's the only place in the world I've ever been followed by a Secret Service type. And I made a video down on this channel. If you look down below, you'll find my brush with the intelligence services. I'll describe what happened there. Now, these individuals, I observe them regularly, especially when things are like building up, like at the moment on the greater psychic level. And sure enough, all last week, every last one of them was, they all jumped from Greta Thunberg. Well, they jumped predictably. They were like, 5 years ago, they were all following Russell Brand. Now they're following Greta Thunberg. Now it's Black Lives Matter, and this kind of thing. Now, I was watching them. It's fantastic. Like, really, they all have certain things in common. They are very easily rattled, very easily unhinged. They chain smoke. All of them chain smoke. All of them look incredibly unhealthy. Even the one that's in this Cambridge Socialist Workers Party is quite well off, and talks with a posh accent. And but there was one of them I was watching this morning. Now, what happened was, all leading up to yesterday's march, there was a crescendo of increasingly manic behavior by them, posting constant links about the riots in America, calling everyone a racist, this kind of thing, constantly whipped up into this madness. And then only one of them yesterday morning posted a video on Facebook that she was going to the Black Lives Matter. And she was, you fucking racist, I'm gonna fucking get you fucking racist. And she went to the one in London. And she's, this morning, just as I expected, she's sitting there making videos of herself, smoking cigarettes like this, with her eyes like this. The dopamine and the hysteria rush has gone off. And she's she had her high yesterday and is now back into deep crashing. And you see this with a lot of them. They're definitely not alive like you and I are alive. In fact, none of them are alive like you and I are. They're purely a product of conditioned responses triggered by the media, with a kind of a subtext of what's right and what's moral, which drives them. And you can see how the majority of people involved in these kinds of movements, they're predominantly, nearly all left wing, almost exclusively, are basically mentally ill people who've been groomed by the leadership at the top. But now it's different. Now it's very different. I was watching a documentary about the Hellsgate cult. The one that Marshall Applewhite and him and his female sort of like leadership, Bo and Peep, they called themselves. And they started out in the 60s. doing a kind of an amalgamation of Christianity and flying saucer redemptionism, that the space Jesus was coming, which is basically the template of all uh, flying saucer common cluster cults. It's a Christianity. Christianity is the underlying software, particularly the Book of Revelations, of all flying saucer common cults. They're all that, okay? The alien salvation cults, because it's Christianity has so worked so well as a mind control program that the people are already in the door. So there's a famous there's like in Jacques Villet's Messengers of Deception, a book I highly recommend. He talks about, like, back in the 70s, early 70s, he was warning people about Marshall Applewhite and Hellsgate. And of course, no one listened. But the amazing was he was getting most of his recruits from top universities like MIT and Harvard and Yale, and what's the big one in California, Berkeley. These were all his recruits, because what was I telling you, the easiest people to mind control are people with third level education. They're all left brained, and they've no right brained spatial or environmental or cognitive awareness in terms of social intelligence, because the mirror neurons are gone and or depleted. And so what was interesting about this documentary about Heaven's Gate is that all the recruits were all people who'd had involvement in previous cults. So they had involvements in things like EST, Scientology, transcendental medication religions. They'd all bounced from one to the other. But then they had finally found the one in Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate, all the other ones they had bounced looking for answers. They'd all bounced from those cults looking for an answer. And when they arrived in Heaven's Gate, they found the answer. So it was the terminal point of their quest of looking for a meaning to their lives. Now, I'm seeing that now with Black Lives Matter. These Black Lives Matter zealots is the only word you can. The white ones. I'm not talking about the black folks. The white ones have found their Heaven's Gate. It's this. This is spectacularly spiritual, if you haven't noticed this, and religious. Now, like what happens with Heaven's Gate's previous members, these ones have also bounced from solution to solution. You will find that initially they were drawn into Occupy. The Occupy Wall Street and Occupy London, Occupy Dublin, Occupy everything, which spawned out of a thing called Take Back the Streets, which was basically a communist thing to destroy businesses in downtown areas. And so they went into Occupy. That was their Occupy didn't work out. So it disappoint. They built up this. We're going to change the world. We're going to. We're going to get off our knees and change the world. That doesn't happen. It peters out. Then there was the Bilderberg Fringe Festival. Oh, David is there, and Alex Jones, and we're going to go to Bilderberg, take them down. This kind of thing. Build up, build up, build up. Nothing happens. They crash. Then after that, Russell Brand comes along. Oh, Russell says we got to vote Labour, we vote Labour. Russell says they're capitalists. Russell's a spiritual socialism. Crash. Crash. Okay. Then Greta Thunberg comes along. And she's now can be considered in the context of what's happening now, the John the Baptist. This is why her family have not only during climate cult stuff, but also claiming that she's the COVID spokesperson. When the climate thing stopped, they have to keep her in the news. But she's more the case of the John the Baptist. She's the one who will come for the one that's coming. Who announced that I am not the one, but the one is coming. And the one that's coming is Black Lives Matter. And they see that petered out as well, the Greta Thunberg thing. Now they've finally found their ultimate religion, the Black Lives Matter. And what you're seeing at these Black Lives Matter events are religious crusades, catering to a profound religious need within secular people to be and feel religious. So deep and so important to them. And they have it. And they are on a messianic crusade. They are destroying statues of old white guys, wanting the streets renamed. What you're seeing is exactly the same thing as what happened with the Christian iconoclasts when they came into Rome. and Greece, they started smashing all the beautiful things of the pagan classical world. Old white guys, old pagan guys back then. It's all white guys today. And they basically destroyed European civilization for about 1500 years. And so beautiful, the temple of Athena, beautiful statues smashed with hammers. Their noses got smashed off because they were demonic, as according to their Jewish holy book, effigies and likenesses they contain demons inside them. And this is what's happening with this Black Lives Matter crowd. They're pulling down statues, defacing things, wanting streets renamed. They're the iconoclasts of today, and they're driven by the same messianic hysterical zeal to do this. And the target is the likes of the New Awakening. The second we have a reason to live, they have no reason to live. A hope of salvation in some kind of woke afterlife is really what they're going for. And this is all you can see it. It's right there before your eyes. The same personality types. Now, yesterday, because of the full moon, the mentally ill came out in their droves. It was by any measure of this effect spectacular. The combination of the Black Lives Matter thing, the combination of the full moon, they came out and put on a performance yesterday. You had people creating fake accounts of my name. You had on Facebook, you had hysterical, psychotic comments left on my videos. All the usual suspects were fired up yesterday and came out. Just because because they have no souls. They're not in control of their faculties. This is the ironic thing about the ones who have the least souls are the ones who get fired up in religious zeal. It's amazing. And so there's heretics. I'm a heretic. People, basically, even people, the whole thing, they're putting their face, they're saying things like, join us or you're against us. That's a classic Christian fanatic zealot mentality. Either you're with us or you're against us. I don't have anything to people that use that kind of language, no matter what the cause. That's sorry. Don't tell me to choose between one side and the other. My life is far more complex than that. And so they're at this stage of messianic psychosis, and it's Heaven's Gate, Hell's Gate. Is really what Black Lives Matter should be called, is Hell's Gate. Now, if you see cult leaders like Marshall Applewhite, David Koresh, Jim Jones, the gaslighting thing is phenomenal. And you see that now with the so-called politicians. Like, for instance, and the whole public bodies, they're doing Jim Jones type gaslighting. So, for instance, yesterday, a health service providers, it was laughed at by some mainstream, but put out there seriously by like National Public Radio, which is a completely like an unbelievable left wing nut house. And basically, here was the actual thing they said. They said that the Black Lives Matter marches don't matter in terms of spreading COVID-19 because COVID-19 was a creation of white supremacy. These are doctors who are saying this. Now that's how bad it's got. That's the gaslighting for you. Another gaslighting I saw was yesterday. I'm not getting involved in racial politics. It's me talking now. I'm not getting involved. I'm not taking sides. I'm an observer. I'm an observer. That's what I am. And I observe. I drink tea, and I know things. And in the observation thing, there's been a couple of attacks now by young black men on white kids in Irish provincial cities, Cork and Limerick. And the thing has been the same. They beat up, attacked a white kid, filmed it, and then put all these these statements on social media saying, the Limerick posse are coming and this kind of thing, and the Carrigaline black boys are on the march coming. There's all this nonsense. It's not to be taken too seriously because a lot of it is just what youths did. But something happened last Thursday in Carrigaline, which is a satellite town of Cork City. Again, a bunch of black fellas stabbed the white kid in the face and cut his head up, and it was filmed, and people are disgusted by it, and the Black Lives Matter people in Ireland, you know what their response was to it? the video should not be shown because it's undermining Black Lives Matter in Ireland. So therefore, a white kid being nearly murdered by a bunch of black kids down in Cork. Now, I don't care if they're black, white kids. I find all that stuff disgusting. Anyone who attacks on, picks on anyone for their race of any direction, it's all wrong. But anyway, so the kid's face is all, he's all been he was stabbed in the head and everything. And it was uploaded to the video. And that's all Black Lives cared about. Black Lives Matter cared about in Ireland. It sets back their movement. Not that the poor kid was stabbed in the head. Not that even that they were angry at the black kids who did it. They just they only cared about their cult. The cult must be, the religion must be protected, and that's now you're now dealing with a cult. It's the end justifies the means. It's the whole concept of how a cult works, and it's just like when you see the ones in Black Lives Matter now, they're starting to defriend and block their family members. My my sister is a total racist. Why? Because she didn't put up a black square, and I'm not talking to her anymore. Well, that's what cults do. Cults isolate you from your traditional family and friends social network, and that was the purpose of the black square. The black square was to test to see who in your family will support your new religion. And if they didn't, they were blocking them. So that's again, it's a classic cult thing. Another cult thing is the inability to understand satire. That's a classic one. Cult members don't understand satire. When I make a joke or you make a joke where we have a satirical element to it, like the joke I made about in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, I'm not going down on women anymore. Now I think that's very funny, and so did normal people. But a person in a cult would actually take that literally. They'd take that literally. Like if I told, like if I did a joke story, like I'm going to fight for Paddy Lives Matter, and I'm going to get myself a potato and fly around that's powered by Guinness, and they would think that was either mentally ill, or I was telling the truth. This is a classic concept of someone who's in a cult, is they don't get satire. And you can see these types don't get satire or comedy at all. They just don't get it. And that's another sign of a cult. And then on top of that, the widows are you're against us thing. Now they have this belief now that all the failures of their lives, like the flat earth cult was the same, that if they lived on a flat earth, all the misery they've had and the disappointment they've had in their lives would be resolved by living on a flat earth, because they failed on a round earth. Humans are very interesting creatures, I have to say. And so a lot of these Black Lives Matter ones, not the black folks, just the white ones, okay, they have this belief that if they totally acquiesce to everything Black Lives Matter stands for, and the more extreme the demands become, or the Antifa demands become, that they will find that all their problems will be solved in a world where that happens, because all the failures in their lives are responsible. The world of white men or old white men hasn't worked out for them personally. So if they live in a world where those old white men don't exist, or don't have any power, it'll work out great for them. And that's a very common thing. And it's not just a black or white thing, it happens across all peoples. There's always someone who'll give you that, like this redemptionist idea that this is the solution. In the 1960s, there was a black church in somewhere in the south in the USA. And understandably, these people had enough of America, because there really was awful racism back then. The KKK were on the march, and Jim Crow laws still existed, and it was terrible. So the guy came up with this idea that we'll all go back to Africa, and then we'll be happy. We'll never be happy in America. And so, like Moses, again, a Christian template, Judaism, Jewish template, they went to Liberia in Africa, and when they landed in Africa, they all stood on the beach and threw their passports into the sea and renounced their American citizenship, that they were back home in Africa. And that night, the locals reported that they were all with their searchlights up and down the beach looking for their passports. They'd spent one evening in Liberia and realized they wanted to go back to America. And this is what's happening with the Black Lives Matter folks. They're in a state of delusion that all the problems in their lives will be solved by this thing. And it doesn't matter. It's not even racism. It's just that every problem, their addictions, their mental illness, their failed relationships, their unhappiness in life, their inability to find satisfaction, this will solve it. It's classic cult stuff. And you'll see it with now. You saw that the the mayor of Minneapolis, who looks like he's about 12, and it's the exact same archetype as Mr. Peoplekind, Justin Trudeau, in Canada. The exact same archetype, and he was sobbing by the coffin yesterday, and for all that sobbing and phony play acting, he went to a Black Lives meeting, and the black people told him to get lost. So the groveling didn't work, and. You see, the black folks are much more. Black folks, in many ways, are far more intelligent than many white people. I'd say, like in particular countries like America, you'd find that the black folks there are far more. When I say intelligent, they've got that kind of street smart thing about them. Their charisma is much better developed, and they're not the fools that these middle class and upper middle class whites try to play them for by pandering to them and patronizing them. I've often found that in America, that like my black friends, then the black guys, and women they're very intelligent, very intuitive and smart, where they had the kind of like white bread on the other side of the cage. You got this white bread stage. I mean, on the other side of the cage, maybe, yeah. You had these white breads who were clueless and easily, innocent to the point where they were just like, "How did you even get this far in life?" And yeah, so they're seeing the white one. It's the white ones in Black Lives Matter, not the black folks. The white ones, and they're seeing. I mean, if I was a black person and I was there, I'd probably be making fun. I'd probably be like having a laugh too as well. But the white ones, and this I'm talking about now, they're in their cult. They think they can be, by not being white anymore, they will find the final answer, and all the problems in their lives will be discovered for them. So I predicted a while back that a lot of these SJWs would commit suicide in the years coming ahead. You see, and the reason why the politicians like the mayor of Minneapolis and all the rest of them are doing it is because they're trying to get back at Trump. Trump is, they voted their entire political life to basically against the system of gaslighting we live under, a political bureaucratic system, globalist system, and then that flopped when Trump got into power. So they're having their collective nervous breakdown as well. And they're in their cult. They're in the cult as well for the same exact same reason. So the next thing you're going to see is mass suicides. You're going to see is something, but before that, we're going to have some terrifying darkness. You're going to actually see some pasty-faced white kid with purple hair and piercings. You always notice the same thing: body dysmorphia, dyeing or shaving of the hair, this kind of thing. We'll go into one of them. These types will probably, and I hate to say it, go into a shopping mall in suburban America somewhere and mow down men, women, and children, screaming, all racists must die. That will come next, and this is what I worry about my friends in America. Like for something like that, that's not that I wouldn't be surprised at that. Just like remember the Green Movement was made up of people like that, the Red Army faction and Baader Meinhof and the Brigada Rossi, and they did similar things in Europe. And you had like Black September, who murdered all they were a communist Palestinian organization who murdered all the Israeli athletes in Munich, and you know it's it's just terrifying in some levels, but it's also if we're aware of what's going to happen, we can deal with it better. We'll probably have we're probably going to have suicides of mentally ill white people, middle class, who will say something like, "I don't deserve to live anymore as a white man, I'm evil," or a white woman, and they'll kill themselves. Some will do things like, well, we've had they'll kill their families. Like, I can't raise a white family; it's an evil thing to do. I saw a video yesterday of like a sort of a family going to a Black Lives rally matter, and it was like they were going to Disneyland or something. And it just the archetypes are perfect, like the boss wife, the cuckold weak husband, and the child behind him totally brainwashed who doesn't really understand what's going on, and so you're going to see this. You're going to see white people taking pledges, saying, "I'm not going to breed because I'm evil." Now remember again, like I said yesterday, these are not my fucking roasted career is getting really busy. It's bad. The cold does it. I've noticed when it suddenly drops in cold, that happens. But it doesn't look like this bad when I'm in around. It seems worse with this camera in the car. If you see, like, if I change the iris, and it actually vanishes. It's only really wherever the fucking lens is in this car. When I'm walking around, lots of people have said to me, oh, "What's that red thing that appears in your nose in your videos?" That know me in real life. It's the Celtic disease. There's nothing you can in the Viking disease. That's my Viking and Celtic heritage. I see it as a beauty mark. So there you go. I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to be perfect at any level. And yeah, there you go. Now there you go. And so it's this is what we have is Hellsgate, the Heaven's Gate cult. That's what it is. It's a cult, and it thinks like a cult. It behaves like a cult. Again, not the black folks in it, the white folks in it, and you even have Sinn Féin here in Ireland who demanded that those videos of the white kid being attacked by the black kids in Ireland. Sinn Féin, the Nationalist Party, by the way, telling people those videos have to come in, come down, not be shown because they'll cause problems for Black Lives Matter. An appalling, horrible political party, Sinn Féin. They were screaming, attacking anyone who had a problem with Greta Thunberg, calling them like weirdos, and the old white fuckers and the fat ugly chicks and Sinn Féin are used words like old white men. It was old white men who freed Ireland and found found Sinn Féin. These people are out of control. They're absolutely insane. But again, it's cult behaviour. We're dealing with a cult. And all the while this is happening, like the Irish Times today, another example of the cult mentality, their Washington correspondent, some bald guy or something, he writes that amongst Trump finds glimmer of hope of possible 2020 re-election. Trump finds glimmer of hope. And then he went on to say the reason why Trump might just squeeze the 2020 election is because he held up a Bible and he's playing to the Bible Belt. Not that he has a huge constituency anyway. There are all kinds of people. No, it was a cynical attempt to keep the Bible Belt on his side and keep religious people on his side. No, it was an interesting thing. That was a very powerful, symbolic thing he did. I'm telling you, Trump knows about magic. He absolutely does. Or, well, of course he does. Banyan probably taught him about it. And it's very similar to the Black Star video where Bowie holds up the Bible at the end. He's aware of archetypes and the power of someone someone holding a black book like that it goes right back to ancient Greece and Rome. It's it's a sign of wisdom, like Aristotle is held. You look at the statues of Plato, Aristotle, Archimedes, they're holding scrolls. You see that a lot in the Renaissance artwork. They're holding books, paintings, drawings. And that Trump was evoking using classical archetypes to battle against the critical theory nonlinear warfare by holding up that book. Very intense, very powerful, evoking classical pagan archetypes and Renaissance artwork. And we are on the cusp of the new Renaissance. We are on the cusp of the new Renaissance. But unfortunately, the dark night of the soul has a little bit longer to play out. But that's what you're dealing with. So if you've had a family member who's blocked you on Facebook and called you a racist because you didn't follow their religious hysteria to the letter T like they did, don't worry about it. They'll come back. They're just caught up in a cult. They'll come back. But the best way to deal with people who are in a cult is not to try to rescue them because it only entrenches them further into the cult, is to just let it play itself out. Because the ones who are capable of stepping into consciousness, who are in this new cult, they will eventually see through it and walk away. Especially when things like mass suicides and things like that happen. This is probably why Trump made Antifa a terrorist organization, to wheeze out the real fanatics from the upper middle class little white boy play actors, cosplay revolutionaries, and they'll run a mile. So like front row seat, we have the front row seat to the destruction of the matrix of the, and like I mean Niall Murphy on his Opaque Lens, Mr. Opaque Lens, or what his new channel is called, on said yesterday like he's talking about like I'm everything that's wrong with me. I'm a white man. I'm a middle-aged white man. I'm basically the devil now or something. A symbol of all evil. Well, no, you're not really, because these things come in cycles. These things come in cycles. So the, the remember that the individuals who the Christians hated and destroyed of the within classical world, the classical pagan people, they all were restored to enormous greatness later on, and the whole of civilization was built upon them. And we still revere the likes of Plato and Socrates and Archimedes and all these other people. And you know that will all this will always come back in the end. These archetypes, and Trump was speeding that process up when you look at him. He was Plato. That's who he was. He was Plato. He was Julius Caesar. You know, he was the, you know, that was when I saw those pictures of him holding the book up. I says he's not holding a Bible up. He's holding an archetype up. That's what he's doing. He's got some serious people behind him who are very aware of how to use psychology and things like that to defeat the pathological psychology of the critical theorists and nonlinear warfare types on the other side. Now, again, I keep saying this to you, okay? Don't let it get you too upset. You remember, you're all right. You're surviving. We're going to get out of this. We're fine, okay? Don't let it get you too down. If you go to my page on Facebook, Throne of the Lightbringer, you'll find that there's people are all gathering there in good humor, bantering, being nice to one another, sharing opinions without this same conflict. It's probably the near, and there's loads of humor involved in it. It's probably the nearest thing you'll find to a Greek symposium on the internet that you'll find today. No one is in there attacking anyone else. It's an observational thing, and no one is in a state of fear. And it's lots of fun and lots of banter and very nice people in there. And so there, you know, that bear in mind that that what you're seeing on the TV is not the norm. It's not the norm. It's the squeaky wheel syndrome, and the media love this. And then what happens then, as I said at the beginning of this video with the control specimens, they are very easily led into these crusades. They're easily led into them. And so I knew exactly how, it also tells you how fragile and how temporary it all is. This is their Heaven's Gate, Jonestown Kool-Aid moment. And like those other cults who reach their terminal point, it becomes a terminal point and nothing comes out of it. So, you know, watch it, observe, take it in, and then go outside into the countryside. If you live near ancient buildings, go and examine them. If you live in New England, go visit those old fishing ports. Go out into the hills to visit the megaliths. If you live in Australia, go to see some Aboriginal artwork. If you live in Europe, there's loads of places you can go. It doesn't matter, and then know that that's the real thing. That's the endurance of the human spirit, and that is a legacy that wasn't built up by cults full of psychiatric or defeated or broken people. That was built by a lineage of people that were just like you. Take care, and I'll have that chat later on the day. Look after yourselves. Love you all.